Good evening, folks, and welcome to this episode of Film Talk from the WSVA Radio. My name's Dominic Sabara, the host of Film Talk, and today we're going to be diving into the territory of cult classics. Now, back in 1982, Ridley Scott debuted his big sci-fi film noir hybrid epic, Blade Runner, which at the time didn't quite go as well as as either Scott or the Lab Company or Warner Brothers had hoped. People at the time were split on the film, and even worse was that it didn't quite do well at the box office, and probably led to the shutdown of the Lab Company. Thankfully, as time went on, due to home video media releases and several revisions to the film, going from the original theatrical cut to Ridley Scott's own director's cut, and then the definitive edition released back in 2007, the movie has achieved a much better status. Some even go as far as say that this is probably Ridley's most personal and perfect film. And it's actually a good time to talk about this film, considering that two weeks ago we got the sequel to Blade Runner that came out in theaters, Blade Runner 2049, which, as most people know, despite being critically acclaimed, most people will know that the sequel will forever be known for probably undoing a similar performance in theaters as the first one. Whether or not that one will get a cult following like the original, that's up in the waters. But with that out of the way, I figured with the sequel now currently in theaters, as I'm recording this anyway, why not go back and look at the one that started it all? Now the story on the surface sounds simple. What it is basically is just a police officer slash detective type officer named Rick Deckard, played by the legendary Harrison Ford, is decided to do one more job before he calls it quits, which in this case is going against a few rogue replicants. Replicants basically are highly advanced robots that look and have a similar intelligence to humans, and can even develop emotions over time. However, while on his mission, Deckard comes across a more advanced replicant that the Tyrell Company, who manufactures them, created, who she calls herself Rachel, and when she came into the picture, Deckard starts to have second thoughts about the mission. Now, with what I like of how the story is set up is how it starts off from a simple goal, but then it evolves into something more complex. Like I said earlier, it starts off with just a simple mission from a guy who just wants to quit his job. But soon enough, as the movie progresses, we get to learn more about what's going on. Not just with the main character and what he has to go through, but also with mainly the rogue replicants, which consists of Leon, Roy, Chiron, I think her name was, and Chris. But I'll save that for a little bit. But that's not the only thing that makes the story intriguing. For one, it's how it sets up this lore right from the get-go, and especially with how it tackles replicants, how they're now seen as like these unwanted criminals or shall we say illegal immigrants in today's terms. I might have confused some people, but what I'm trying to get at is I appreciate the fact that it gives a little bit of exposition of what the world was like without feeling too dumb. It just tells us replicants are highly advanced robots. They were a nuisance to humans, and now and now replicants are to be exterminated. Oh, I'm sorry. Retired, as the movie puts it. Yeah, that's the only stupid thing I don't get. It's like, I don't get why they refer to exterminating replicants as retired. If they develop emotions over time, I'm pretty sure they could grasp the concept of death, but I don't think it's worth dwelling about. But in addition to that, we also get a unique take on Los Angeles. One that is for the most part devoid of nature. Even the animals that you see in the movie most of the time are just real life replicants. Though why they are alright but not replicant humans is anyone's question. But it does also. Well, I just found that a bit of an intriguing. That and another thing that I feel interesting in which the world also helps with the story is with the big commercialism in the movie that you see throughout the movie. What I mean is that throughout the movie you see like Atari logos or Coca-Cola logos plastered about, which gives this sort of feeling like this city is has a bit of a commercialization influence or corruption. Not to top that off with an integration of Chinese culture, where we see more writing from Chinese writing, people of Chinese descent thrown in, and it makes a unique world, and it does sort of and the kind of world that complements the kind of story with the story and with the ideas. Of course, since it's in the future, you can't get away without showing off some impressive effects, and for 1982, these are some damn impressive practical effects. I say practical because computer effects didn't quite take off yet, so it's clear Ridley Scott and the effects crew just had to use a lot of green screens or models, and it's pretty impressive to look at. Yes, it's gritty. Yes, it has this sort of gritty, dark side to it, but at the same time, this is a sci-fi film noir. These kinds of a dark environment to a film noir complements it. Not to mention, also the soundtrack. The soundtrack of the film is since it doesn't really sound too much like music, but I grew to like it eventually. It does has its unique charm to it, in a way. Oh, sorry. Characters. Almost forgot about the characters, since you can have a unique story, decent story, and nice effects and music, but what about the characters? Solid, I might say. With Rick Decker, the main character of the film, I say he's a solid lead. Nothing too mind-blowing, but not only does Harrison Ford deliver a solid performance, but one thing I like about him is one thing the film plays around with, and is one of the more debated things about the movie whenever people bring up Blade Runner. Is Decker human or a replicant? Personally, I'm more in the category that doesn't care, but I do see where people are coming from with both sides of the arguments. On one hand, he clearly has feelings towards Rachel, since he wants to avoid killing her and and wants to make sure she trusts her. On the other hand, throughout the movie, he tends to stare at pictures that are clearly that came out way before he was born, or pictures that are completely unrelated to him, since he's trying to get probably to get a good emotion out of him. Okay. Sorry, I got a random text. Not to mention, then we have one of the big points that people bring up on the replicant side: the unicorn. The way most people say that the unicorn was there because proves that he's a replicant, because they sometimes don't know what's real and what's fantasy. Obviously, unicorns are fantasy, and since not only does Decker imagine one at one point, there's even towards the ending he picks up an origami unicorn, and just. What I'm saying is that both the pictures and him thinking about a unicorn does support the replicant side. Not to mention other smaller details like Roy knowing Decker's name even though he never said it to him, or the fact no one really asks about his background. As for Rachel, she is a bit of a she is mainly relegated to being a kinda sorta of love interest, but she definitely is sympathetic, since she does believe that she is human, even though Rick and her creator Tyrell both know for a fact that she's a replicant. It's not much to her character, but that little plot point right there does give her some sympathy. Not to mention how Rick sort of softens up to her a little, toward as the movie goes on. Yet Scott doesn't really go all the way and say, "Oh yeah, these two are a couple." It's more lead up to people's interpretation of how they interact. Then we have the villains: Roy, Leon, Pyron, and Pris, who are, like I said, the rogue replicants. I think the reason why I feel like I sympathize with them, yet feel like they're good villains, is the goal they want: to have more life. Because replicants at one point have a point where they just shut down automatically. No need for retirement, no need for someone to kill. They just die. So in a way, I do kind of see why they want to do this. They want to keep living a life. This is especially illustrated near the end when Roy gives the infamous monologue to Rick Decker. I won't spoil the monologue, but let's just say it's a nice blend between a robot that understands human feelings, but still doesn't quite grasp it just yet. It's just one of those cases where it's emotionally close, but no cigar. As for some of the smaller minor characters like Tyrell, who runs the Tyrell Corporation, who makes replicants, I honestly find him fascinating, but mostly because of how he was able to create these kinds of inventions, and how he was able to make Rachel a much more advanced replicant than the other ones. Anyway, everyone else is solid, but solid, I think. As I mentioned before, the story started off simple, but sort of changes and morphs into something a little bit more complex. Part of the reason is because some of the themes the movie tackles. Of course, I mentioned some like the destruction of the environment, commercialism, and whether or not if Deckard is a human or a replicant. But I find the whole idea of how. But there are some other things that I find fascinating. For example, the whole irony with the test of whether or not a person's human or replicant. What makes it beautifully like tragically ironic is that the people asking the questions have a cold-hearted, have a cold, lifeless look, while the replicants, who are supposed to be the lifeless robots, tend to get a bit emotional with the questions. To me, I like that as a bit of a contrast, since what we perceive as cold and lifeless has more emotion than the people with actual flesh and bone. I guess I did kind of want to talk a little bit more about the themes as I went. But to me, the way I see Blade Runner is like a movie that I know that I'll like more and more if I watch it a lot more in the future. Truth be told, I saw this movie like 1 week ago, but I was impressed with what I saw, and definitely know for a fact that if I watch it again, I'll pick up a lot more on some of the things I didn't notice. But I should probably tell you, if you're going to watch the original Blade Runner, search out for either the definitive cut or the director's cut. Because to my understanding, the original 82 theatrical version doesn't have some certain scenes, and the ending is completely different from what we got. I might as well spoil this, but the ending I saw was basically after Rick saw an origami unicorn, which like I said earlier, enforces the fact he may be a replicant. He goes to the elevator with Rachel, and that's how it ends. The way it was ended was probably to have people interpret what happens after. Something that feels pointless nowadays with the advent of the sequel. But to say if the sequel never happened in an alternate universe, that was the point of the ending. To my understanding, the theatrical version, in other words, the one that was released back in '82, from what I've heard, has a happier ending that felt out of place about reading it. Look it up for yourselves. I don't really think I'll spare you read. I'll spare you telling. You can look it up online. I'll just tell you right now, it's pretty underwhelming compared to the ending that I saw. But yeah. Overall, I found myself enjoying the original Blade Runner, and I honestly am not surprised why it sort of developed this sort of cult following, since it is a complex movie with interesting themes, a story that starts off simple but evolves into something more complex. Characters that some may look simple on the surface, but can be easy to grasp and understand their plight. Not to mention impressive effects for the time that kind of hold up well even today, and a very unique soundtrack. I'd say Now, if you're curious about seeing Blade Runner 2049, I recommend you would check out the first one. Either no, I think it's best to check the first one out since my understanding the sequel follows. But picks up where the story left off 50 years. But if you have no interest in seeing the sequel, just want to watch it, just watch it, go ahead. And I especially recommend it to those who are fans of science fiction or familiar with Ridley Scott's work, especially those who enjoy Alien, since it has the same sort of slow-paced atmosphere building scenarios that the original Alien had. Now, I may or may not see the sequel depending on how things go, but for now, I'm content with just seeing the original cult classic. I'll see you guys next week for my Halloween special.